Okay, and with that, I want to go ahead and kick off our DocSIG webinar here. Thank you everyone for joining. We've got a nice sizable crowd for you here, Dr. Aulona, 53 people. That's really awesome. This is part of a new initiative that DocSIG and as part of AMA are trying to conduct here on kind of the off time of AMA scheduled events. And so look out for more of these webinars as we go along. And I also want to thank our chair of special projects and partnerships, Ezra, that's here for coordinating this event with Dr. Aulona. Just a brief introduction here before I let her get started. Dr. Aulona is a lecturer in marketing at Leeds University Business School. Her research interest has covered the effect of psychological threats on individuals and their consumption preferences and choices. Her research has been published in a slew of journals ranging from Journal of Consumer Psychology, Journal of Advertising, Psychology and Marketing, British Journal of Social Psychology, and many more. When we were speaking with Dr. Aulona before, we were talking about kind of some of the tips and tricks that she has, talking about the JCP article that she has, the job market, and all of those things as well, and preparing for that market, from an international perspective, and kind of what are all the things that you have to look for when going to the job market. So with that, I think Dr. Aulona put the slide deck in the chat. If you do have any questions that you would like to ask throughout the presentation, we do ask you to put those in the chat for now until the dedicated Q&A is open. And from that, I will let you take it away. I would like to formally introduce Dr. Aulona. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Luis. Thank you for the presentation like a rock star. And you can definitely call me Aulona. You can definitely drop the doctor. Just go by Aulona. But thank you. Yeah, I'm thrilled to be here. And I'm kind of jittery. It's like 77 people. I was not expecting this. You'll see that my job market experience is quite unusual and weird, but I hope that I can share with you all that I know. So Luis said, keep the questions for the end, but if that's fine with the organizers, you can just raise your hand and stop me actually when I'm presenting something, because then you'd have to, okay, so Luis giving me the thumbs up. So just stop me, raise your hand, and I think it's easier that way rather than waiting for the very end, because otherwise we may forget or we may lose the track of what we were saying. So just interrupt me at any time, right? So very brief introduction. Born in Albania. How many of you guys know where Albania is? Ezra knows. Good. Divya knows. Yeah, so very small country, 3 million people next to Italy and Greece and Kosovo. Then I moved to Italy when I was 18. I started my undergrads there in international economics and management. I liked it there, so I stayed there for my master in marketing. And then I left for a couple of years. I went to the industry, did some HR, and then I was missing school, or I was missing being a student. I don't know. But I went back because there was an opening as a research assistant in the marketing department in Bocconi. So I was like, yeah, sure, let's do this. The coincidence was that the day that I got the offer to become a research assistant, I got an offer from Pfizer to work in their quarters in Milan, and I gave up Pfizer to become a researcher, basically. So I could have been really saving lives now. No, I'm kidding. I wouldn't be working in vaccine stuff. I was going to work with vitamins, and marketing basically. But yeah, so this is how I entered into the PhD. I did my PhD there, stayed in Bocconi for 5 or 6 more years. And then I moved to Leeds University Business School. right after finishing my PhD, basically. In the meantime, just to spice it up, I decided that I was going to have a baby, and I just wanted to make it more complicated. So there was a baby in the middle of the PhD, basically, which did not interfere with the job market time, but it did definitely spice up the experience of the whole PhD and the job market afterwards. Research-wise, well, I would like to divide my research stream into two: psychological threats and consumer behavior, financial restrictions and consumer behavior. Why did I divide this into two? Because basically, I was suggested that it's good to have two clear streamlines rather than being all over the place, basically. You're going to have lots of projects. If you are able to put them all into a couple of streams of research, that's really going to help, because then it looks like you don't just get on board with any project possible. You actually have like a streamline, and you follow your path with your research. Then you can have many different projects, but as long as they fall into a couple of streams, that would be great. So this is how I divided mine. Inside of each of these streams, I had several projects, and the good thing is that I could group them into a couple of bigger categories. So you'll see that, for example, under psychological threats, I also had threats and branding, threats and heroism, threats and anti-heroism, threats and vintage consumption, but the IV basically was the same one. Into financial restrictions and consumer behavior, there was the effect of temporal focus in the context of motivation and preferences, duration of self-control, but again, here the independent variable was the same, so I could group them into the same category. Questions so far? I guess not. So what to consider before going to the on the job market? These are the considerations that I was doing back at the time. Am I rushing into this? Is this the right time to go on the job market? Because you play it all kind of when you go there, right? You don't want to go too soon. You don't want to go too late. You don't want to go twice. It's normal to go twice, actually. It's normal to try it 1 year, and then if it doesn't work out, you try it again the year after or in the secondary market. However, do ask yourself, are we rushing this? Am I being pushed by just by the system basically to go on the job market? Do I feel ready for this? How do you know if you're ready? Well, you can compare yourself to the other candidates in the job market, or you could just feel it. You could compare with the others that went the year before. I know that this is a very particular year. There is the pandemic. There is no face-to-face AMA basically to go, no flyouts happening. It's a very weird year, and this has definitely put constraints on you going on the job market. But do consider whether you are rushing this or not. The other option is postdoc yes or postdoc no. Basically, I was asked this when I was close to the job market. My advisor approached me and said, do you want to go for a postdoc? Are you able to do that? Are you willing to consider that? And I think that it's a great opportunity. If you do not feel ready to go on the job market, that could really change your career, because you can go for a year or two into a top school, or work with people that are well known in your field, and that can definitely change how you go on the job market 2 years later. For me, it was a no, but for mostly for family reasons. I didn't want to go on the job as a postdoc and work as a postdoc, because I didn't want my husband to leave his job and move to another country just to stay 1 year, basically. So there may be personal reasons why you just don't want to do that. I wanted to move once and for all, basically. And I said, I'm not able to consider the postdoc option. But that was mostly for personal reasons. And I think we all have the reasons to go or not to go. It is a great possibility if you do not feel ready to go on the job market, basically. Very important thing to consider: costs. you will be anticipating lots of money. Okay, as a PhD student, you don't earn a lot. You're on a scholarship at best. You may work as a teaching assistant. I know that doesn't pay so well. So it's difficult to put money aside, but you have to consider that when you go on the job market and when you get an offer, you are going to be at least anticipating lots of money. You're going to be anticipating money for the rent down payment for where you are going to be hired. You are going to anticipate money maybe for relocation, like transportation of all your stuff in the new country, visa applications. I think in most of the countries where you would go, you'd be required to have a work permit, which probably is going to demand lots of money. Okay. I get a question from Matilda. Thank you for this interesting talk. Thank you, Matilda. I would like to ask you, what do you think are the elements to consider when searching for a postdoc? I would go with an option that is better than your PhD, first of all. So you want to top it up. You want to go to a place that is a better place, either in terms of prestige or in terms of the people that you are going to work with. And I think the second one is even more important. You don't want to go for a postdoc in a place where you will be just doing the things that you were doing as a PhD student, and you don't have people to start new projects with, or you don't have people that are going to give you more resources than you previously had. Otherwise, it's just going to be 2 more years of work as a PhD student. Okay, you want to upgrade yourself. So how do you upgrade yourself? Either by starting very cool new projects with new people that are going to be in that new university, or by having more resources, whatever it may be, a very cool subject pool. They may have a lab with all the fMRI machines, or they may have connections with companies that you don't have in your university. So rather than just being something that is going to fill the next 1 or 2 years of your life and is going to allow you to keep earning money, which is still very important, if possible, you'd like to top it up with good new collaborators, or with more resources anyways, right? So which is going to help you boost your job market in a year or two after the postdoc. How do people see postdocs? Why do they hire postdoc if they have their own PhDs? That's a very interesting question from Jesse. I'll tell you the politics of my university. So in Bocconi, and I think that's kind of also like the American system, you don't hire your PhDs as postdocs. It's different in the UK. In the UK, it's common to keep the PhD students as postdocs if there is an opening. It's completely different in many European schools and most of the US schools. You do not hire your PhD students as postdocs. So basically, you are kind of like obliged to leave after you've done your PhD. So, and they are kind of obliged to hire new people. Sometimes the resources are that of hiring a postdoc, and sometimes the resources are that of hiring an assistant professor. If you have, as a university, if you have resources for hiring a postdoc, most of the times the politics will be that you want to hire someone outside of your own university. And that is in order to circulate resources, basically. Okay, so that is to push us to go to other universities, because by going to other universities, we will have access to more people, to different views, to completely new network, to different resources. So that also allows you to grow more as a researcher, but also personally. So this is why many schools do not hire postdocs, their own postdocs, basically. So their own PhDs as postdocs. Does the number of years at PhD, 4, 5, 6, matter, keeping other factors equal? Okay. I can tell you that it's different, 4, 5, or 6, it's different from one marketing stream, let's say, to another. Like in consumer behavior, it's quite common to go around 5 years time. This is so when you see the candidates that come Look at the candidates that come for job talks in your own university. Look at their CVs if they are shared with you, or feel free to ask them actually, how long did it take you to do your PhD? Usually CB candidates are around 5 years. In strategy, given that it's more difficult to get the data, it may take 6 years. I think that if you show that you have been productive during 5 or 6 years, that there were no gaps, or if there were gaps and they were justified, then no one would penalize you for taking 6 years to finish your PhD rather than 4. 4 is quite uncommon because if you consider PhDs outside the UK, you can't even defend in 4 years, basically. In Italy, the least that you can take is 4 years and a half. Okay, so you can't even go on the job market and have defended in 4 years. Ezra is asking, how many projects is enough to be ready for the job market, or is it based on your data set? From your previous slide, you had almost 9. Okay, that's a tough one. I'm going to talk about that later. Do you want to keep that for later? Yeah, because it was one of the questions that we have put there. Do postdocs have advantage offer only PhD for assistant profs jobs in the US? Okay, so there are some calls that are for rookie, let's say, assistant professors, and there are some calls that are for people with more experience. I think if they're searching for rookie PhDs, you have great chances without a postdoc position before. If they're asking for someone with more experience, then who has a postdoc probably would have more, would have better chances, just because they have a couple of more years of experience, more projects, more to share, and more to brag about basically on the job market. But otherwise, I think one knows whether he wants to go for a postdoc or whether she wants to go directly for an assistant professor position. 51% have considered a postdoc, and you really should, especially in this period where the market is so unstable. It's really crazy what is happening this year. It's really unpredictable, and it seems like it's a safe, it's quite a safe option to go for a postdoc, because again, you do that because you want to upgrade yourself as a researcher. You don't do that just because you want to buy time. Okay, if you have the opportunity to go somewhere with great resources, with great people to work with, then it's a very good opportunity, because you don't want to just get a job just because there are no jobs around. Okay, that is going to be a commitment that you will bring with you for the next at least 5 years, let's say. It would be kind of weird if you went somewhere just because you got a job offer, and then in a year time you regret it, or you switch to another university. You would, I mean, as a recruiter, I would see that a little bit as shady. Okay, so it looks like you just got it because you accepted that offer just because you needed to accept that offer, and it shouldn't be for those reasons, basically. So yeah, any more questions on postdocs? Another thing to consider is probably if you want to take a 1 year or 2 years of postdoc position, usually there are either 1 or 2 years. If you feel like your projects are on a good stage, advanced, maybe you have an R&R and you want the paper to be out by the time that you go on the job market, then 1 year should be enough, for example, to get that paper out. So you may consider postdocs that are of 1 year duration. If you feel that you need more time in order to materialize your projects, then maybe it's better to have a postdoc with 2 years. That gives you 2 years of time, basically. Okay, good. So we were left at costs, money. You'll be anticipating lots of money. Visa requirements and procedures, that is something you want to consider. And you want to consider, and you want to have time to prepare for that. Because these things take months. Trust me, it's not something that you get the job offer now and in 2 months' time you can just go there without sweating a lot. Okay, you're gonna sweat because you're gonna pay money. You're gonna sweat because there are lots of bureaucracies there. You're gonna sweat because you have to run for visas and finding relocation and so on. And these are all to consider. But the good thing is that most schools would cover a very good part, if not all, relocation expenses. And this is something you definitely want to ask when you get a job offer. Okay, so it's not a weird thing to ask. It's a very normal thing to ask. You get a job offer, maybe not at the interview before, but when you do get a job offer, have a chat either with HR or with the head of the division that offered you the job and ask, what is the relocation situation? So is the school willing to cover for most of the expenses? Usually they could cover the transportation of the goods. They would cover the visa expenses. They can cover the flight tickets for when you transfer with the whole family, for instance. These are all things that you want to make sure that they are very clear when you accept an offer. And it's good to ask, basically. Wait, I have Alicia, and Elsa. So is it more valuable to have an R&R with a top journal or a few publications accepted at lower journals when going on the market? That is completely dependent on where you are heading to. If you are going to look for a job in the US, you definitely want to have an R&R rather than 3 publications in a B level journal, okay? When I was on the job market, I had a JCP and I was told, don't go, and I had an R&R, actually I had a third round JCP on one of my dissertation papers. So I was gonna go on the job market with 2 JCPs. Then I got rejected in the 3rd round, like 1 month before going on the job market, okay? I had been preparing since January on my portfolio and everything, and I was gonna go with 2 JCPs, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna revoke this job talks. I'm gonna do really great. I'm gonna be the star of the market, right? Nope, they didn't happen. And however, the advice that I was given at the AMA workshop was, you don't want to go with 2 JCPs because then you will signal the Ivy League schools that you only aim for JCP, as that was something bad. But it's not a A+ publication. It's not one of the 4. And you want to show that you don't aim for just JCP level. You aim for marketing science. You aim for JMR, JM, and JCR. So that was the US market. The European market is quite different. You go to the UK, you better have a publication or something really close to being materialized rather than a risky, major and risky JCR revision or major and risky JM revision that may or may not happen, basically. So it really depends on where you want to go and what they are expecting of you. So if your aim is to go for top schools in the US, that's great. They won't be probably expecting marketing science from you. They may be considering you more if you have a good and solid R&R rather than having a psych and marketing. And I'm saying that because that's like an easy 3, let's say. So that's more or less, you will have a clear idea where you want to go, where you want to aim at. And based on that, you will know how to position your CV, okay? Elsa, how do you think about the option of working in industry and then come back to academia after 2-3 years as a recruiter? So do you mean before the PhD or after the PhD? After the PhD. So you do a PhD, you go to the industry. I know a top scholar that she has done this. She was doing the PhD. She then went to the industry, stayed some years there, and then came back. First of all, it's going to be difficult, I think, to catch up with the market and with everything that is going on in academia. If you completely leave for 2 or 3 years, it's going to be tough to come back. And it's like going to school, then breaking for 3 years, and then going back to school and opening books. I mean, that's tough. Okay. The good thing is that if you go on the industry and then you decide to come back to academia, you're going to have lots of contacts. And those contacts are going to allow you to conduct field experiments, which are so difficult for us, for instance, to get like connections, to collaborate with industries, to have a real impact on the market. So I'm sorry that I don't have like a definite answer, yes or no. I think that if you justify that with connections, with consultancy, with maybe case studies, for instance, if you are able to justify those 2-3 years away and still keep in touch with academia and still have the willingness to go back to academia after 2 or 3 years out there, then I think you wouldn't have issues with people wondering why you left 2 or 3 years and then came back. It's just, it really depends on what you do with the time that you have, that you are away, basically. What was the poll about? Where do you plan to apply for jobs? Okay, so many US markets and then European market. I mean, I guess, I don't know if you left the multiple choice active, or could they only...
Yeah, people could have picked multiple if they were applying to multiple markets. And sorry about the Canadian market to our northern neighbors there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good approach to select more than one market, basically. I remember that when I was thinking about schools, I had this Excel sheet and I did like, these are the continents, and I chose all the countries, all the universities that I would actually move and live there. I know that there are some very good universities in some countries where I wouldn't feel very comfortable living, which wouldn't be in line with my lifestyle and how I want to raise my family, for instance. So there was no point in applying there, although the university was very good and the people that worked there were really promising. If it doesn't fit with your lifestyle, then just don't put it on that list, okay? Because you'd be wasting your time preparing for interviews, for flyouts, and you'd be wasting their time interviewing you and getting to know you. So if you don't see yourself living there, just don't put it on the list. Is it correct that on average the compensation level in US is higher than in Europe? Definitely. Yeah, that's definitely the case. Probably double. Yeah, so that's the thing that Jennifer is asking, right? So what about the cost of living? You have to check what I've put here as the last point, the standards, basically. So what are the life standards? You have to consider how much you're going to pay for health insurance. You have to consider how much you're going to pay for rent, how much you're going to pay for the schooling system. There are, I didn't consider, for example, when I moved to the UK, the fact that schooling costs so much for children under 4. And while I did all my calculations, I did not, for example, consider that I was going to pay £600-700 more per month just to bring my son to the kindergarten. I mean, they basically eat mud all day, but yet it costs you like £70 a day, basically. So it's like every day he went there, I was like, there you go, £70 gone. You have fever, you cannot go for 3 days. Good, £200 gone, because you'd still need to pay for them. So consider all these things before you move to that country, because they're going to have a huge impact on your monthly salary, and you want to be prepared for that. So it's true that in the US you pay a lot, you're paid a lot more, but it's also true that the life standards are, so the life expenses are way higher. You're going to pay for health insurance so much, which you don't pay in most of the European countries. You're going to have to pay for schooling system, which again, you pay kind of in the UK until there are like 3 or 4, but then in many other countries, like in Italy, you don't pay basically anything about regarding the schooling system. So these are things that you want to consider. There are some websites like After Tax, where you can calculate how much you're going to get like net every month, and that helped me a lot to compare the salaries, and it's going to tell you how much you're going to pay for pension and how much you're going to pay for insurance or for extra pension options and so on. Work-life balance is very different. You mean US versus Europe, right? Yeah, absolutely. That is totally your choice of life. You can either opt for the frenetic, very exciting US kind of life, or you can opt for a chiller one in some good university in Europe, for instance, that will allow you to break at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. and not work over weekends and not feel guilty about it. It's definitely up to you. I believe that if you make a good investment in terms of PhD and postdoc eventually, then that is going to leave the door open to choose whatever university you want to choose afterwards, because that will give you the basics of being a good researcher. Thing is that after you finish your PhD or your postdoc, you are going to stop learning, or let's say not stop learning because that's like too harsh, but like slow down the learning. So you won't have time to sit and have a 4 or 5 weeks course on econometrics 1 and 2. You won't have time to sit down and learn how to do things on Stata. You won't have time to read econometrics for dummies, right? So these are all things that you do when you are a PhD student. And when then you start working as an assistant professor, it's just work's going to grab you, teaching's going to grab you. Your PhD students are going to get lots of time from your time. So it's going to be difficult to be a student again. So invest a lot in your time when you are a PhD student and a postdoc, and probably when you are a very junior researcher, because then life happens, basically. Is it possible to move from another market to the US market about 2-3 years after getting the first job? I've definitely seen people do that. If you move from Europe to US, you have to be really good, because you know schools in the US are a bit more demanding. So you have to show that those 2 or 3 years, you really made good use of them. Okay, so you really managed to materialize some projects or get some granting or get really good teaching evaluations. You started collaborations with very cool people so that you justify your move from Europe to the US. It's easier if you are in the US and you're coming to Europe. Do you have any idea about Canada to US? The universities that I know in Canada, they are quite hard to get into. So they were as demanding as the US. I wouldn't know about the other universities. So I think if you are like University of Toronto, HSM Montreal, and so on, then you wouldn't have issues, right? But if you are in other universities that I don't know of, it may be more difficult if they are not top universities, let's say. It could be more difficult. Okay, good. What do I have here? What are some lessons? I have like I have the poll open, I have the chat open, I have the participants list open. Wow, 97. And I have some some of you guys that I see here. I see Alicia, I see Ezra, I see Lem, Ashley, Divya, and I don't see my slides, basically. What are some lessons? Wait, there's a question, but I obviously moved it. So
just to help, how about we hold off the questions for about 10-15 minutes, just so you can go through your slides, yeah?
Okay, let's do that.
Hold off the polls.
Let's do that. So what are some lessons students need to know when diving into the job market? I'm going to share with you the lessons that they shared with me at the AMA workshop, which was a 2 days workshop that would prepare you before going to the AMA, basically. I know that it's a harsh jungle out there, so you need to stand out. And how do you do that? You need to find something. I mean, we're in marketing, so you need to find something that makes you unique, basically. When I explained to them what my research was about, I told them that like my job market paper was about psychological threats and brand communications. Okay, so the way that you position your brand and the language that you use in your communication can make you feel better if you are perceiving some types of psychological threats. So I told them about this study that I did in the lab with tea bags, and basically I showed participants different bowls of tea, and each of them was described in a different way. So the brand positioning was manipulated in a different way. And they were like, oh, then you definitely have to bring tea bags as souvenirs in your talks. I was like, that's so weird, right? But they were like, this way, they're going to look at the tea bag and they will have your CV and they will definitely remember the girl that left the tea bags as a souvenir. Okay, so they're going to match whatever you were doing to the CV, because they're going to interview like 10 people per day. If you go to the AMA, you knock on the door of the room and they're like going to see like 10 people a day. They won't remember all of you. So you want to make yourself recognizable. You want to make yourself rememberable. So you want them to recall you even the day after. And how you do that is either by leaving something particular, like a souvenir that relates to your research, or in the next slide, the label, right? So you want to make sure that you have a label on you with your research, with what you do. You don't want to be the sustainability guy, okay? They're gonna meet so many sustainability guys. You want to be something specific. So given that my research was about psychological threats and half of my papers are about fear of death, I was like, they're gonna remember me as a death girl. They're gonna go like, oh yeah, right, Aulona, the death girl. I don't want to be remembered like that, right? Because it's a very easy label to put on someone, like the mortality salience girl. I didn't want to be that guy. So I said, you know what? I'm gonna just position myself as in two of my papers, I had heroes as a priming technique in order to kind of like mitigate the mortality salience. So I was like, I'm gonna wear a cape and I'd rather be remembered as the superheroes girl or the heroes girl rather than the death girl. So you choose your label, okay? Choose your label from your research and make sure that this label is salient, either with a souvenir or with some particular information that you give to them, or maybe even with a logo on your CV, whatever. Just make yourself, make them remember you the day after, basically, okay? Then you want to be able to pitch your talk in 15 seconds. You're gonna meet so many people. Prepare your elevator pitch beforehand. You don't want to try it with the first time that you go there. You try it not only with your friends, because they know what you do, okay? So if you ask my PhD friends, they knew what I did. I talked about that all the time. I know what they do, because we were complaining about our research all the time, right? But if you go to other people from other disciplines, or even better, people from outside the academia, that's great, okay? You want to be able, in very simple terms, in 50 seconds, to say what you do. Usually, the best test is with your parents. I bet my parents still don't know what I do. They're like, we know that she's teaching in a university. And my mom, she asked me the other day, so if you teach a lot, you're going to become an associate professor sooner. I'm like, Mom, teaching is like a cost, basically, to do what we love doing. So if I ask them, what is my research about? No clue, because I haven't tried the elevator pitch with them, basically. But try it with people from outside the academia, because you'll see how difficult it is to explain them what is your dissertation about. If you ask, if you just tell it to your classmates, that's going to be way easier. But you want the people from outside the academia to understand what you do. So when you achieve that, you've got your elevator pitch. Okay. Good. Try to, how to best leverage your networks and connections to navigate the job market. Yeah, so this is about your connections, okay? So it's about getting in touch with the people that are senior and getting in touch with them for two main reasons. First of all, you want to get lots of advice on how to prepare for the job market. You want them to dedicate time to you for mock interviews. Get as many as possible from different people. They are used to recruiting assistant professor. They are used to recruiting postdocs. They will know how to make it tough enough for you to be prepared for when you go on the job market. Okay. When I had to present, I chose to, no one obliged me, but when I was preparing to present at the doctoral colloquiums, we asked 4 or 5 professors in the division. We were in 3 from our school going there. So we asked 4 or 5 professors to just sit down with us and listen to us. And that means more than 3 hours of presentations. They sat with us, they listened to our presentations, they made challenging questions, they asked challenging questions. They tried to put us in a, let's say, in an uncomfortable situation, so to get out of our comfort zone. And they challenged our research. And it was good practice, because when you go there, you know that it's going to be friendlier, but at least you are prepared for the nasty reviewer questions, basically. They knew what kind of questions we would get at the doctoral colloquium. They knew what kind of questions we would get at the job market. They definitely know what kind of questions you would be getting, more or less. At least 70–80% of the questions they would have asked to other people before. So you want to do that, and you want to practice a lot with the seniors in your division or in your network, the mock interview, okay? At least the 15-minute, 20 minutes quick one. Then you want to use them for another reason. You want to use them for recommendation letters. This is a tricky one, because you want to get the recommendation letters from people that know you, not from people that are just willing to write you one. It's very easy to tell whether this person really knows you and really supports you, or whether this person has just written the recommendation letter because he or she is nice and just feels like writing one. So you would usually have a couple of letters from your supervisors. So if you have 2 supervisors, you would have their 2 letters. But then if you can get the blessing of a couple of more senior people and put them as possible references in your CV, that's going to be a big plus. Okay. Okay, so here's Ezra's question, kind of, yeah? So what do you do when you do not have as many publications or preliminary, but have preliminary data? You want to emphasize how your research is as good as it can be, basically, okay? So you have to get the points of strength from your research, and you want to emphasize them a lot. Be it the method that is particular, maybe it's you've used AE in your research, which is so cool. Everyone loves it. Everyone craves it. The universities go crazy after that. So you say that you've done some machine learning, for instance, and they're going to go like, okay, I don't care if you don't have publications, because you will definitely have, and you will have strong ones, because machine learning pays off. Or you could have a field experiment, for instance, okay? So we know how difficult it is to go there, get companies to collaborate with you, collect data in the field, make that longitudinal, and you've got it even more difficult. So again, you may not have the publications, but it's because you've dedicated so much time to this very cool project with this very cool methodology or data, and you want to emphasize that, and you want to kind of explain that. What I did was with my job market paper, again, so the tea bags that I told you before, it's those bowls that you see here. So this is where I put the tea bags, and I was manipulating the brand communication in different ways. And I wanted to explain to them that to emphasize even more the fact that it was based on consequential data. So it was done in the lab. It was not published. I had to sell it in a way. And I told them, yeah, you know what? I know that there is a limit of being a lab study and there is the limit of not being published, but it's with consequential data. And they loved consequential data when I was on the job market. It's behavioral, sure, it's great. So basically I was telling students as a thank you note, you can get tea bags from one of the bowls, please read them and choose the one that you want. And some of my colleagues that were noting down what brand did they pick. So they liked the idea that it was consequential, right? Alternatively, I couldn't collect data in the lab and make it consequential again. So what I did was, for example, this online study where in order to make it consequential and behavioral in that case, and it can be quite challenging when you go online, I showed them two types of baskets, again, with different manipulations of the communication of the brand. And then I told them, you know what, I cannot gift the basket to everyone, but I'm gonna randomly choose a couple of you from the list of the prolific IDs, and you are actually going to receive the basket that you choose, okay? So at that, in that condition, they were more, they had greater incentive to making a choice that was close to what they would actually choose in a supermarket, for instance, because if they were chosen to receive the basket, they would like to receive the basket that they like more, okay? So I think there are ways around to make your research sound even cooler, and to emphasize how difficult it was to achieve this, how peculiar the sample that you have, for example, or the methodology that you have applied is, so that you can kind of justify for the fact that it's not published. It's not published because it takes more time. Yeah, Ezra, does it answer your question? Yeah, okay. Good, so what else do I have here? What do you do when you do not have as many publications? Oh, it's the same question, yeah. So then, apart from the research, you also want to emphasize other services to the community, okay? Either to the scientific community or to the department or to other colleagues. So for example, you can put on your CV if you are a PhD student representative, put all the ad hoc reviewing that you have been doing. So you have the opportunity to be a reviewer for conferences. If you submit a paper at EMAC or ACR or SCP or other conferences, you can just click the box that you are available to act as a reviewer, and you may get papers. And if you get papers to review, just put them as service to the community, basically. Otherwise, if there is a journal that you, or some journals that you really want to review for, because you feel like they're quite in line with where you'd be sending your papers, you can write to the editors or to the associate editors about that. You can say that I'm interested in acting as a reviewer. These are my fields of expertise. These are the methodologies that I usually use in my papers or in my research. If you feel that there is any paper that I could be reviewing, I'll really be happy to do that, okay? And trust me, they would be happy to have people that are available to act as reviewers, because that's the toughest part, is finding people that are dedicated to reviewing a paper. Or like you guys are doing, organizing these types of events, or you could be organizing, let's say, reading groups with your other colleagues from the PhD and sharing your research ideas and presenting your paper and having mock presentations there. Before I defended, I was already working in Leeds, and I remember that I asked my colleagues, were all other assistant professors, whether I could try my defense with them, and they sat there for like 2 hours, poor things, and they were listening to my presentation, and they were asking me questions, and I told them, these are the people that are in my committee, so read about them and put yourself in their shoes and ask me tough questions as they would. So they were like, okay, I'm going to pretend that I'm Zach now. This is a very Zach question. And how did you do this or that? And how do you know that this is not this, but it's caused by that? So if you organize such even small informal events and you put it on your CV and you talk about it, you are going to show that you are a proactive member of the community, that you are collegial, and that's something that is really appreciated by universities. Remember that you are evaluated on 3 things: research, teaching, and how collegial you are, so service. Okay, so you want to show that you have, if your research is not published yet, you want to show that the other 2 maybe are quite strong. If you haven't taught yet, because your university probably doesn't allow you to teach a lot as a PhD student, show that you have been collaborating with other people that are not your advisor, or that you have been participating in lots of conferences, or that you have been organizing small reading groups, or yeah, similar activities like this, or you've been reviewing and so on. I think I skipped one part, which was like, wait, very important. Well, what happened to my slides? Wait again, yeah. There was one point. Yeah, so here basically, there was this advice that I was given at the workshop. You have to write down the things that you would never leave the room, not even in case of a fire alarm, without your interviewer knowing about this. Okay, so you have to write down 2 or 3 things that are crucial for them to remember and to know. You know that these are the most important things that they should know about you, and you really shouldn't leave the room without them remembering this. So if you write it down, if you specify them beforehand, then it's going to be quite easy when you have the actual interviews. It can be, again, methodology. It can be awards probably that you have won, or it could be people in your connection. So for example, saying that in my committee, I have this person, and then these other people are willing to provide a reference letter for me. And if these people are really cool, you really want to emphasize that. Or it could be press coverage. Yes, my research has not been published yet, for example. However, it has attracted the attention of the Guardian, which when they heard about this research, they were really interested and they wanted to write a short article about it. Or yes, it's not been published yet, but for example, I did a radio interview about this topic, and they were interested and they wanted to follow up with another short interview, for instance. So you want to show that there are 2 or 3 things. Try to understand which they are, and never leave the room without telling them. Basically, you feel free to brag about it. Okay, so you are there to sell your work. So make sure that you are prepared beforehand to do that. Where was I? Here. Okay. Then another thing is you have to explain what is the plan for the paper. It's normal for it not to be published, especially the job market papers, but you have to have a plan. You have to have a clear timeline. I plan to submit this paper in a month's time. It's now with the copy editor. It's normal that your job market paper is almost finished when you go for the interview. So you want to say that it's now with the copy editor, which means that it's really like a well-prepared draft. And I plan to submit it to this journal in a month's time. Okay. This other project is in the data collection stage. I already have 4 studies. I'm running a 5th study in order to replicate the whole model altogether. And I plan to be done with it in 3 months' time, and I will submit it to this journal. Don't play the fake submit game, because it's, from what I know, they're not going to buy it. Okay, it's useless to submit a paper that is not ready just for the sake of putting on your CV under review at, because one, you'll be burning your chances with a journal if the paper is not ready, because they will reject it and you will not be able to send it back to the journal unless you change 80% of the paper. And two, you are not signaling that that you are good or better than the others at anything. You are signaling that you have a finished draft of it, but you can have a finished draft and just don't submit it beforehand, because it's not going to look any better. I mean, if it's finished and you are ready to submit it, then go for it. If you're submitting it just so that it's under review for when you are on the job market, then think twice, because it means that something is still lacking, basically. And this is why you wouldn't have submitted it if you weren't on the job market. Okay, whoa, I'm done. Good. So I'm open for questions now. Where did we stop?
Thank you, Aulona.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, let's take some questions for now, and I think we'll be done soon.
Guys, do you want to unmute yourself, or shall I read the questions?
Yeah, I'll mute myself.
No, I mean, do you want to unmute yourself and ask the questions, or do you want me to read them from the chat?
Sure, I'll just go through them. Let me just do a quick check.
I think we stopped at Cheryl.
Yeah. Let's say I want to advance myself as a researcher, for example, going to conferences. That's the one that we needed to get to.
Yeah, but I also consider other markets besides the US. Is this? I don't think I understand the question. So let's say I want to advance myself as a researcher, but I'm also considering other markets beside the US. I think one does not exclude the other. Absolutely, I think you can definitely advance yourself as a researcher and consider markets besides the US. There is no such commitment that if you go for the US market, you don't go for European market. It's just that there are some schools in Europe that they have the same way of functioning with the US schools. So if you prepare to go to INSEAD, or if you prepare to go to a top US school, then it's more or less the same market that you are looking at. If you are looking at another European school that is not, let's say, INSEAD or LBS level, and you also want to go to the US top schools, then you are looking at two different markets. So that would be a little bit difficult to put together, especially if we go back to the discussion of the publication. So should I just have an R&R in a top journal, or should I go for a B level or 3-rated publication in a European market? So you kind of have to decide that a little bit beforehand, just because you have to work on positioning your CV and where to send your paper. So you have to have a clear idea where you want to aim at. Then if you have the top publication, you can aim for both markets. I mean, I'm sure that non-top schools in Europe would be very happy to have on board someone with JCR or JM. However, it means that you have dedicated all your time to preparing for that market, and you don't have a publication that is more in line with, for example, other European schools.
All right, then we've got Alex saying, regarding UK market, I've been told that the decision to hire is typically between a day after the interview. What is a good way to handle this in the event that there's an offer, but there are more interviews to come in, say, 2 or 3 weeks at possibly other institutions?
Yeah, that's a very good question. It is what I went through during the job market, basically. So I had an interview with a school that was like 4 hours drive from home, and I liked it. It was very much in line with what I do. People there were working on the same things. Believe it or not, other people working on psychological threats. I was really excited about that. And I had an interview with them that was, I think, 3 or 4 days after the Leeds interview, right? So I had the interview with Leeds on Friday, and then 2 or 3 days after, I had this other interview. And I had quite high chances there, humbly saying, but they opened the position for me. So they were really salient on the fact that we want you here, we want you here, we want you here, right? However, I did the interview with Leeds on Friday, and then on Monday morning at 9, they call and they're like, okay, so we've got an offer for you. This is the salary that we would be paying, and we would like you to start in September. And did I mention that you have to get an answer to me in 48 hours? It's like, no, how can I do that in 48 hours? I mean, you're asking me to just change my whole life. And I was planning to move in January, and they want me to actually move in September. So like 4 months before what I had planned. And I had to go through visa processes and everything. And I really wanted to try the chances at the other university too. But then, I'm very risk averse, and I was like, I don't want to burn an opportunity. Maybe the other school will not like me. Maybe I will not like them. So what I did is I negotiated to have 4 days instead of 2 to give Leeds an answer. And I said, okay, you know what? Now I have a whole week, basically. I contacted the other school and I said, you know what? I don't want to play hard here, but I have an offer which expires on Friday. Is it possible that we anticipate the fly out that we have together? Because I really want to consider also the other school. They told me that it was not possible because the dean was out of town. So I did not try my chance there in the end, and I wanted to be risk averse, and Leeds was already very appealing in terms of what they were offering and in terms of the lifestyle that I wanted to have afterwards. So I said, you know what, I'm going to take that one, and I don't want to, I mean, it may be the one that got away, but it may also be something that wouldn't have worked, and I wanted to be risk averse on that. The only thing that you can do in that case is you try to negotiate with the other school and say, you know what, if you haven't had the fly out yet, you maybe want to anticipate it. If you've had the fly out and you're waiting for their offer, I think you can put it in a very polite way that you have to give an answer to the other university, and you have to do that within this time. So if it's possible to let you know what is their decision, that would be great, because this would allow you to consider both schools. If they're not willing to do that, then you make either the risk averse or you make the risk taking decision. It really depends how much you want the other one, basically. Yeah, sorry.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, if anybody wants to join in to elaborate their questions, they can unmute their mic. So the next one we've got is from Kate Sansom. At my university, I've helped to start a social committee for our marketing department. Would that be something she could leverage on her CV, even though it's on a social level?
What is a social committee? Do you care to elaborate? If it's something that you gather informally and you talk about research, definitely. If it's something that you go for happy hour all together, then you could play it as we talk about research most of the time, but I have no idea what is this social committee. So
Kate, would you like to elaborate? If not, we'll take the next question. Sure, yeah.
I had a similar question to Kate's, and I'm not sure it's the same thing, but I've been curious about something similar. I've been heavily involved in my local community with COVID and trying to get people access to money, housing, food, clothes. And so external community involvement relative to the university, it's been more community centric. Does that kind of service worth talking about, or does it have to be research specific and service with joining committees and reviewing manuscripts?
No, that's definitely something that you want to mention, because it's something that, yes, you do outside the research context, but it's something that defines you as a person. It's something that tells so much about Alicia and what she does in her free time and how she dedicates time to others. And it's a pro-social activity. So you definitely want to, they're not only getting the Alicia, the researcher, they're also getting Alicia, the person. Right, so you definitely want to emphasize this aspect of yourself. So if I say in my free time I like to go and cuddle dogs just because I like dogs, that's something that tells that I'm I've got a soft thing for dogs, but that's it, right? But if you show that in your free time, you are this type of person, they definitely want to know that, because again, it's not only the researcher, it's not only the teacher, it's also the person that they are hiring in their division. And I was told this after I started in Leeds, and I asked for a period of leave, and they told me that we haven't hired Aulona the researcher, we've hired Aulona the person with the research and teaching context, but it's definitely the person overall that they're hiring. So I think you really need to emphasize this beautiful thing that you're doing.
Thank you, Alicia. Elsa had a question. It's hard for APs in teaching schools to jump to research schools after 2 or 3 years. What schools view such cases as?
I know of cases that they have started as probably more teaching oriented position, and that they have switched afterwards to research. But usually when you go on the job market, you either go for a teaching position or a research position. And since you will be dedicating most of the time to doing either one or the other, it's really difficult to jump from a teaching position to a research one. Just because if you go for a teaching position, you will have so much teaching to do that will not allow you so much to focus on research and on advancing all your projects. And after 2 or 3 years, you will want to show that you've done so much in terms of research to justify this switch. So unless you really have time to dedicate and resources to dedicate to research and to topping up your research, that's going to be quite challenging, right? So it's just for that. It's not because there is a stereotype behind doing a teaching position or a research position. It's simply because you will have to justify a lot that you deserve to, not deserve, but that you can just qualify for a research position, basically.
All right, so we've got me, so we'll ignore that. And we've got Cheryl saying, what I mean is that conferences and top scholars are majority of the time in the US. So if I leave the market, does that limit my options?
If I leave the market outside the US, I mean, most of the top conferences are in the US. And even if you want to go for a European position, it's perfectly fine to go to the top conferences in the US and still aim for a position in Europe. For instance, if you want to keep both options open, you may want to go to ACR and AMA and SCP that are almost always in the US, but you may also want to go to EMAC, for example, or European ACR that happen in Europe, because this will allow you to also show that it's not only the US context that you care about, you also care about the European context. And for example, EMAC is one of those huge conferences that allow for every type of research in marketing to be presented, unlike SCP, which is completely about social psychology and consumer behavior, basically. So you want to show some dedication also to the European market, for instance. You want to show dedication to European conferences and how you are also active in those. For instance, I used to go to ACR, but when ACR happened also in Ghent, which was the European ACR, or when it happened in Berlin, I made sure to also be there because I wanted to signal that I also care about the European market. And EMAC, again, is a good conference, and you meet so many people from different disciplines. So and they've got a great doctoral consortium program. So you also want to keep that in mind, and in order to signal that you care, for example, about the European market, or if it's not the European market, if it's the Asian market, the same applies, basically.
All right, so I'm going to take the last 2 questions together, which is, apart from advertised positions, how do you hear about any postdoc opportunities? And the other one is, if you want to, any advice for dual academic partners if you're looking in different departments for a job?
So how do you hear about advertised positions? So, well, there are, all the formal routes. So Elmar or jobs in UK, or what they advertise on AMA, or An interesting one was the job market at EMAC, for example. It allowed me to have all the interviews in Europe there. So during the conference, they did, during the conference, they had this booths for interviews, basically, and all the European schools were there, top schools, but also medium level schools that were meeting the candidates there. And it was quite interesting. It was not as intense as the AMA, but it was still very, very intense. You could have 4 or 5 interviews a day with different schools, and it was good because you were both in Europe, you were showing commitment to the European market. So that was another thing. And they were only posting them, for example, on the European job market page. So on the conference, on the EMAC page, they had this dedicated section about the job market. You'd sign up as a candidate, and the moment that you sign up, you would be able to see all the openings in Europe. Another thing is word of mouth. Basically, it's impossible to keep track of everything, of every portal possible, but with word of mouth, I know friends of mine that are on the job market, so I would just share with them when universities that I know that they would be interested in, when I read it on LinkedIn or somewhere else that they have an opening, I would share with them. And word of mouth is really strong. It's how I applied to Leeds. Basically, was we were at EMAC in Glasgow. My PhD friend, we were sharing a room at the conference, and she was like, "I'm gonna apply to Leeds because my advisor told me that they have an opening. Why don't you also apply?" I was like, "There's no way they're gonna get 2 from the same university. Plus, they close tomorrow." And she was like, "Yeah, let's apply tonight so that we are within the deadline." Basically, I was like, "But if they told you and you do marketing strategy, it means that they're not interested in me, that I do CB." Anyways, it was a 10-minute application. I applied because I already knew a couple of people from Leeds, and I knew that it was an appealing option, and we both ended up coming to Leeds, basically. So I wouldn't have applied if it weren't for the word of mouth, because I didn't know about the opening because I was only following the Elmar calls. So yeah, that's another option. The other option is the open informal option. So your advisor could send a letter, could send an email to the schools that you are really interested in. So that other option that I was mentioning before Leeds, they didn't have an opening, but I told my advisor that I liked that school, and she wrote an email to the head of the division saying, "This is Aulona, she's my PhD student, she's on the job market, this is her CV, this is her research statement. Do you have an opening, or are you going to open any positions soon?" And they were like, "We don't have an opening, but we like the candidate. Let's have a chat," right? So even if they don't have an opening, you could just send an email either directly, or even better if your advisor does that, because, you know, a little bit more gravitas if it comes from an established faculty member. So you just send a letter, and you never know if they're going to have an opening very soon, or if they have an opening but it's not on yet, or if they really like you, they can just open a position for you. Yeah.
And the last question was if you're a dual academic or if you're applying into different departments, right? I'm guessing your thesis is using 2 different.
Well, wait, what was it?
That's Abhishek Lahiri. So if he's still on.
Okay, what is your advice for dual academic partners? I wouldn't know how to answer that.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, what I mean is me and my partner applying to the same school as dual academics. Like both of us are academics, we are going to the job market together.
Yeah, I only know of some cases of friends doing that. I haven't faced this in person, because we made an agreement that I would be the one moving and he would be happy to follow. And I also wanted to make sure I don't marry someone that talks about research in the free time, because then we would end up talking only about research. But I mean, I admire people that work together. We have in the division, in the same division, married couple that work on the same papers, and I admire their ability of not killing each other. I think it's a very good leverage that you can make if you're both in academia, if you're both in similar divisions, like let's say organization and marketing, strategy and management, or economics and marketing. It's quite common to say that usually one would have more leverage than the other. So if you already know where you want to go and you both agree on that, it's quite common for people to move together. I've heard of many cases of them doing that. You apply, and then if they have interest, you try to drag the other person and say, this is the situation where we're both looking to joining the same university, or maybe different university in the same city. So the one that has more leverage would be able to play the game and bring the other one also.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck with that, Abhishek. All right, so I think if there's any more questions, if we might have, 5 more minutes, and if not, then you could unmute yourself. You don't need to worry about the chat.
Thank you, Juan.
So,
Thank you, Melanie.
I'm guessing we don't have any more questions. Thank you, Aulona.
Thank you so much,
Thank you for
guys.
sharing. Well, firstly, thank you for taking out time for us.
This was fun. Thank you. Oh, thanks, Cheryl. Anyways, if you think of any questions afterwards, you want to reach out, just copy paste my surname because it's difficult to spell it. You'll find me. You'll find my email. Just drop me an email, and I'll be happy to take that. Don't worry at all. So just send an email, and we can talk more about any of your doubts.
Thank you for taking the time, Aulona. This was really helpful.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad.
And Esra, thank you for putting all of this together. We wouldn't have had a chance to meet with Aulona if it wasn't for you. So thank you so much.
Yeah,
thank you for your time. Yeah. And thank you everyone for their time. Thank you
all for attending. I'm so glad that everybody could make it.
And thank you, Aulona, for sharing your journey, because it seems like quite a journey.
Oh, my pleasure. I can talk about that for hours.
Question, Aulona, did you actually wear the cape
at
the interview?
Well, the thing is, I didn't go to the AMA afterwards because I got the offer from Leeds in June, which did not allow me to go. I went to the workshop, I prepared the portfolio, but then I didn't go to AMA. I actually went to AMA because everything was booked for with my other friend that we were both hired at Leeds. So we had from the school everything booked for, and we just went for a week in Boston, and we just walked and walked and walked because we were like the only people without the stress of the interviews. We were like, we got a job. Now we can just go and enjoy Boston. And we met one of the faculty members from Leeds there. I was like, I swear I'm not here for interviews. We're just here because everything was paid for beforehand. So we just went there and we enjoyed Boston basically, but I didn't end up having the AMA interviews, although despite all the preparation and the mock talks and everything, yeah, so no cape.
I'm sure you enjoyed Boston. It's a beautiful city, one of my favorite in the US.
I mean, that's the most beautiful city I've been in the US. I really liked it. Yeah.
We actually still have 20 other participants here. So I'm assuming that y'all all enjoyed it so much that you'll want to stay. So that's really good.
It's okay. It's only 9:20 in p.m. in the UK, so I can stay for a couple of more hours.
Thank
If
you for
anybody
joining us
has,
this late.
yeah, if anybody has any other questions and, that's why they're waiting, feel free to speak up so that, Aulona can address that right away.
Yep. Oh no, the numbers are going down.
Oh,
If no one does, I'll
we
just
can have another session too, It doesn't need to be a one-off thing.
or I'll just like do a Zoom call with her. Yeah, I was just thinking, we talked about how to leverage things which you do outside the academic sphere, right? And how much can you, does it always have to be in the arena of marketing, or can it extend
No,
further? And how much of your CV should be all of those things?
No, I think I've heard people leveraging on how they're good at sports. Definitely not me, not that guy. But they were like, I play volley at an agonistic level. So this is what I do in my free time. It definitely tells a lot about the person. If I said that in my free time, I'd rather watch Friends over and over and over again, I don't think that would make a very interesting case unless they also love the series. Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't have to be marketing related. It just tells so much about you, and I think it's worth mentioning it. Yeah.
Like, I know Esra has done a lot of work back home, right? I think that's what you're referencing, Esra.
Well, yeah. I mean, I do a lot of volunteer work here in Leeds as well, but that's just like a hobby. And it's been a hobby for years, but I've had other hobbies which usually involve a lot of micro businesses or going into startups, helping them get investments and then coming out. And that a lot of that work I do is pro bono as well. So I've been doing it, well, I set up my first one at 16. So I got my investments and then and it's just been a hobby, but like now I've been told when I'm going to the job market, it's something you could think of putting on your CV. And I'm just like, does that really work or not?
No, but that's definitely one of those things you don't want to leave the room without them knowing, even in the fire alarm case, basically. So it is related to consulting. It is related to being pro-social. It's related to helping the community anyway. So it's definitely something I would emphasize. Also because you can sell it as later on I may keep these connections and conduct research together, so you can really give it a marketing spin if you want it. But even if there wasn't a marketing spin there, you still need to emphasize that.
Thank you. Yeah, so I guess we're done. I don't know if anybody's got any more questions.
Yeah, I think that's about it. But I mean, we can stay and chat for as long as you want, Aulona. No issues. But
Okay,
it is late there, so we appreciate you taking the time and staying back for all of the questions that came in. Thank you so much.
No, it's fine. It was my pleasure. It was my pleasure. Okay, I guess we can call it a day if there are no more questions there.
Yeah. And again, this doesn't need to be a one-off thing. So you can count on us reaching back out to you and, checking in with you about something else that might come to our minds or something else that you might think about. So this is kind of a communication that we're going to keep going and see where we end up.
Great. That's awesome. That's good to know.
Regardless of me being here or not, in the equation or not.
Yeah, this has been
Are you planning on leaving the equation?
No, I mean, I hope to graduate at some point.
Yeah.
Point.
And you will tell us about your job market experience after you start working somewhere.
Yeah, hopefully.
To stay in academia. If not, you'll tell us how beautiful life is outside academia.
Either way, it's a good story to tell.
Yeah, absolutely.
Either way.
All right. So we have the recording set up, so it can definitely be shared, hopefully, with whoever was not able to make it today. And everybody's found this immensely helpful. So thank you again, Aulona.
Oh, I'm happy for that. And we got peaks of, I don't know, the highest number that I saw was 97. So I guess it was
99. Yeah, I was like writing down the whole
Yeah,
time.
almost touching
This is,
100.
that's been my emails going like.
I should have connected from my phone also to make it 100, but it's fine.
Oh, yeah, but this was a
Lucky
great
odd numbers.
turnout.
But yeah, great. Thank you. Thank
Okay,
you.
guys, then thank you.
Thank you. Good night. And thank you once again for making the time. This was really, really great.
Especially at night. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, I'm kind of